Hello there, fellow cultists. This is DM Nell, and I'm back with another episode of Sotdl Talk. This is the video series that I put together semi-weekly, whenever I feel like it, actually. And it's the purpose is to talk about our favorite game, which is Shadow of the Demon Lord, the role-playing game by Schwab Entertainment. And this week's episode, I am here to talk about starting adventures. So, as those of you who play the game know, and maybe those of you that don't play the game don't know, um, the game is designed in tiers and tiers of play, I should say. And so the tiers of play start with the starting tier, goes to the novice tier, which encompasses, the starting tier encompasses level 0 characters. The novice tier encompasses levels 1 through 2. And then there's the expert tier, which encompasses levels 3 through 6. And then there's the master tier, which encompasses levels 7 through 10. If you want to go into forbidden territory, then we can say that there is also a paragon tier, which is for levels 11 plus. But that is a topic for another video. So for today's video, we're going to be talking about the starting tier, level 0 characters. So the game was designed to start characters off at 0 level so that they can, first of all, learn how to play the game and do so without having to worry about the weight of all the extra rules that come with picking paths at the novice tier and the expert tier and the master tier. So the basic game, the core system is based around rolling a d20, adding boons and banes to try to hit a target number. And the supplemental rules that come with novice and expert and master tiers break those rules. Basically, they bend them and break them. They add complexity to the game, like any role-playing game does. So the starting tier is really the only tier where you are playing the game and you are found, or you find yourself in a situation where you have to pull yourself out of the ordinary to become extraordinary, is how I think of it. Everybody else in the world is kind of living in the world, but player characters pull themselves above the world in order to be able to affect what's happening to the world because of the shadow that has fallen across the world from the Demon Lord. So that's kind of how I think about adventures and adventuring, and how leveling works is that these are people that they're no longer normal people. They are people that have become more than just your average everyday citizen. And we start at 0 tier. Now, at the 0 level, you are still considered to be an average everyday person. But it's through the course of that adventure that you pull yourself out of being an average everyday person to realize that you have a larger purpose in life. So what I would like to do is kind of talk about what that really means for people that play the game on a regular basis, and some of the starting adventures that are out there to help facilitate that starting level. Now, I've been playing Shadow of the Demon Lord now since it came out in 2014, and I've run 3 full campaigns, and I have two campaigns going right now. And then I've run several one-shots, and I've played a few games as a player. And I think that I've come to the realization, I came to the realization a while ago, that starting adventures for seasoned players are probably not the best place to start. Simply because it puts your starting player, or it puts your player characters in a position where they really have to start at the basics every time. And for my team, for my group that IGM, they already know how to play the game. They know the rules more or less. And so starting them at 0 level every time I want to start a new campaign, I find to be unnecessary, and it's almost boring for them. So I find it to be better for a seasoned group to start at level 1 and just go from there. Now, there is still value in having a starting level, of course, for new players. And I think that when you have a group that is mostly new, or at least you have a few players in your group that are new to the game, then you should start them in the starting tier at 0 level. That gives them an opportunity to learn the rules mechanics, as I mentioned before, and kind of ease them into the game. But I would recommend for experienced players, at least in my experience, you can skip the starting tier and go straight to level 1. Now, each group is different. Your group may like starting over from scratch at 0 level. That's great. More power to you. I'm just saying it's not necessary for experienced players. You can start at level 1 and not miss out on any experience in the game. But let's assume that we are starting at the starting tier. So the starting tier has a number of starting adventures that have been published by Schwab Entertainment. There may be more out there on Drive-Thru MTV. Yeah, no, Drive-Thru RPG. I haven't looked for any starting adventures out there from the community, but I do have all of the starting adventures that have been published as standalone adventures for or by Schwab Entertainment. And so I kind of like to go through each of those and talk about them one by one and give you my thoughts on each as a as a starting adventure. Now, just to warn you, I have run 2 of these adventures. I have read one of the adventures with the intention of running it. So I prepped it to run it, but I hadn't actually gotten to run it. And then I have read the other 2 other adventures, and then I've played in one of the starting adventures. So what I'm going to talk about is from my experience as either having run the adventure, having prepped the adventure, having read the adventure, or having played in the adventure. So let's start with Survival of the Fittest, which is what we have on the screen here. This was written and designed by Robert Schwab himself, the Demon Lord himself. And it's the first starting adventure that came out for the game Shadow of the Demon Lord. Now, I'm not sure if this came out before Tales of the Demon Lord or after. I think it came out before, but I'm not positive about that. But it's the first standalone 0 level adventure. And this particular adventure is set in the Northern Reach, although it can be really set anywhere. There's not a defined place that it has to be set. But when I ran it, I set it in the Northern Reach. And it assumes that your player characters, or the player characters, are on a caravan that's heading into some civilization, but specifically heading to a town called Fletcher's. I think it's called Fletcher's Rest. Let me just verify that. Fletcher's Rest, yes. So the adventure assumes that you're on this caravan and you're on a road that is going through the Old Wood. Now, the Old Wood is situated in the Northern Reach, is why I said it should be in the Northern Reach. But again, it can really be set in any forest anywhere in the world. So they are on a caravan going through the through the woods, and their caravan is attacked by bandits. So through the chaos of the attack, the player characters are forced to flee into the surrounding woods to survive the attack, because there's too many bandits, and the player characters are just normal people. They're not armed. They don't have the means to protect themselves. The people that were protecting the caravan were killed in the attack, so their only choice really is to flee into the surrounding wilderness. And that's where you start the adventure. You don't actually play through the caravan attack. You kind of pick it up in media res, and you start the adventure by saying, okay, your caravan was attacked. It's utter chaos, and you find yourselves forced to flee into the woods for survival. And that's where we start. All right, so then you have this map where you are supposed to have your player characters roll to see what direction they are headed in the on the map. So it's kind of like a hex crawl. But I found when I ran this that was a really inefficient way of running this adventure. In my estimation, after having run it, I would say that the better way of running this adventure would not be to have them randomly roll to see what direction they headed in, but rather roll maybe to see how many hours in between encounters they are traveling through the forest, and then you kind of plot their way through the woods in the direction that they were headed to get to Fletcher's Rest. And then you set up the encounters when they reach a point where you feel like it's best to add an encounter. Now, the reason I say this is a better method is because the way that the game wants you to, or the adventure wants you to run it, is that they would roll to see what direction they're headed. So for each hex, let's say they start in this hex right here. I'll see if you can see where I'm pointing, but down here towards the lower right-hand side of the map, there's a star icon. So let's say we're starting in the hex right above that. That hex is their starting point, and the players would roll a d6 to determine which direction they go from there. So that's mentioned here under exploring the wood. So it says when the adventure begins, they get lost from the lost in their flight from the ambush, blah blah blah. And so it says, at the end of each hour, the group travels in a particular direction and have that character make an intellect challenge roll with 2 banes, reducing the number of banes by 1 for each wilderness profession he or she has. On a success, the group exits the hex in the intended direction. On a failure, the group exits the hex 1 step to the left or right. For example, a group that was traveling north would exit to the northeast or northwest. If the total of the roll is 0 or less, the group gets turned around and doesn't leave the hex at all. Okay, so basically what that means is they could be going in any direction. And they could be wandering through these hexes without hitting any point of interest for hours of your real game time. And that actually occurred to me when I was running this adventure. We spent a good chunk of the time that we had allotted to us to game having them roll to see where they went, and they just kept going into these hexes that had nothing in them. Now, of course, there is a random encounter or old perils table that you can add interesting things in unoccupied encounter or unoccupied hexes. But when you have a small amount of time to get through this adventure, this is not the most efficient way of getting through the adventure. Because literally, you could spend the entire game session having them go hex to hex and missing all the interesting points and never actually reach Fletcher's Rest. They can wander off the map. And then what do? So I would say once again, what you would rather do is not even have the planned encounters or the written encounters in the hexes that they are supposed to be in, as denoted by the map. Rather, have them or place them in the order, either in a random order that you roll for, or you can place them in the order that you would like for them to encounter these scenarios. And I would also recommend that they don't encounter all of the scenarios, because that could result in their untimely deaths rather quickly. Because some of the encounters may be a bit too much for them, especially if they've encountered a couple of other scenarios prior to it. So let me kind of walk through what's referred to in the game here as keyed locations. But before I do that, just kind of walking through the adventure here, you've got exploring the wood, which I just mentioned, the perils, which is the random encounter table, which you can encounter anything from a medium monster or a ghoul to some large spiders or some bandits, sickly wolf, a bandit, a singular bandit, some heavy rains that slows them down, and then deer, squirrel, raccoon, or some other harmless wildlife that maybe they can catch and use for food. Here's a section on force combat, and then there's keyed locations. So the keyed locations talk about these sections on the map that are numbered or otherwise indicated by a symbol. And so the starting point is where the adventurers would, of course, start, and that is the area marked by the star here. So actually, when I mentioned this hex earlier, I should have said the star hex. That's encounter area 0, or keyed location 0, which is a safe zone, and they can rest or try to plan out what they're going to do next. And then the next is an ambush site. And this is where they get ambushed by some bandits. And that is actually where they had been originally attacked and driven away from. So if they've managed to find their way back to the site, that is listed here. And it says that there are still 4 bandits keeping watch over the site. So that is location number 1. Location number 2 is a fungus patch. And it's kind of hard to see some of these numbers, but location number 2, I believe, is over here to the left, right above the legend, the map legend. And it's a fungus patch. And the fungus patch has some fungal mites in it, so it gives you an opportunity for a little bit of combat with some monsters that aren't really that tough. And then there's a rotting carcass of an orc that is there. And they also have an opportunity to get some loot. Then there's the Haunted Ruins. The Haunted Ruins are location number 3 right there. I really like the Haunted Ruins because it's very evocative, and it allows the players to have a place to rest. They can also find some loot, but it also gives them an opportunity to encounter some ghostly apparitions that rise up, and to play with the insanity mechanic, because the apparitions are scary or frightening. Then we have a Misty Clearing. This gives you an opportunity to play with the diseased rules, because the mist in the Misty Clearing is kind of poisonous, and so they have to make some challenge rolls to see if they get diseased. Then they run into, in keyed location number 5, there is the Psychotic Woodcutter, and he is... where is he? He is... There's 5 right there. It's got a little axe. So over here on the left-hand side, there's a Psychotic Woodcutter, who is actually a skin changer. And so during the day, he is just kind of a lonely He's not really mute, but he doesn't speak because he's been isolated in the wilderness for so long. He's forgotten how to talk. And so, just depending how the characters approach him, he could be a friend, or he could be an enemy. But when it gets dark, he definitely becomes an enemy because he changes into a werewolf. And so he can definitely be a problem for them at that point. Number 6 is a lonely cottage where you have a hermit that can be an area to rest, and it can also help with some healing if the characters have taken damage or otherwise need to just get some rest in. Then you have Area 7, which is Eaters of the Dead. So a pack of ghouls live in Area 7, which is way up here. And then you have the last area, which is, next to the last area, which is the bandits' actual camp. That's way down here in the lower right-hand corner, down there. And then finally, you have Fletcher's Rest, which is where they are trying to get to, which is at the very top of the map up here. So you can see they're spread all over the place. But if you're randomly rolling and they start down here, then chances are they're going to miss a lot of these keyed locations and just wander through a bunch of random hexes. So what I would do, once again, is just pick the encounters that you want them to hit, and then just say after a certain number of rolls where they are traveling hex to hex, generally in the direction of Fletcher's Rest, then put them into one of these keyed locations. What I would recommend is starting them off easy with, say, the fungus patch, and then maybe go to the haunted ruins, give them a chance to rest, and then maybe hit the psychotic woodcutter for some role playing, either the psychotic woodcutter or the misty clearing. But the misty clearing may cause them to get diseased right away after resting. That's not really fun. So I would say another encounter would be good. So either the psychotic woodcutter or the ghouls, although the ghouls might be kind of tough for them at their current level. You don't want them wandering into the bandit camp because there's a lot of bandits there, and this shouldn't even be in here. The only reason this is in here is because when they finally make it to Fletcher's Rest, if there's still time in your game session, then they can pull together some people from Fletcher's Rest and go attack the bandits. But that's, once again, that I would just leave number 8 out altogether because there's no way they're gonna survive that. So I would say either the psychotic woodcutter or the Eaters of the Dead. If you want them to get some more combat practice in, then probably Eaters of the Dead. You might want to make it, instead of a pair of ghouls, just one ghoul. But depending on how many player characters you have, the 2 ghouls may be okay to keep. So anyway, this is what I would recommend to get them through the adventure. And then finally, when they're in Fletcher's Rest, like I said, they can go bandit hunting if they want, or they can use this as a launching point for their first level adventure in the novice tier. The rest of this adventure has just basic information, how to read stat blocks, and creature information for the creatures that are in the adventure itself. So this is a very good adventure, especially for starting, not only starting players, but starting GMs, or GMs that are starting to run this particular game system. So I like Survival of the Fittest, and I definitely recommend this one as a starting adventure. In fact, I would recommend it as the first starting adventure that you use for Shadow of the Demon Lord. All right, so let me go ahead and move on. The next adventure I want to talk about, I also ran, and it is Dead by Dawn. This adventure was written and designed by Rob Wieland, and again, another standalone adventure. And this one is probably my favorite from a if you take all the adventures and just which one is the funnest and which one is the most interesting, for me, this is it. Because it gives you a scenario that we're all familiar with, which is undead that are swarming a building that has people trapped in it. And it enables your player characters to play the characters that are trapped in the building trying to stave off these undead creatures. And it does it in a way that is very unique. It has a unique way of presenting the adventure and having the player characters interact with each other, with the people in the non-player characters in the adventure, and with the creatures. So basically, the premise of this adventure is that there is a curse that a druidic order has been fighting for a long, long time, and it is driven by an old tree that has a demonic presence within it. And actually, it says it's a dryad corrupted by centuries of spite and bitterness. But I prefer to think of it as a demonic presence, something akin to what you would see in oh shoot, what was that movie? Army. Let's see, Evil Dead. The Evil Dead. So just an evil presence in the woods that causes undead creatures to rise and attack. So this is a curse that a druidic order has been fighting for a long time, but they found a way to make the curse dormant by doing a ritual on this tree called the Old Knock, and the ritual basically puts the evil presence to sleep. And the sleep lasts for a year, and then the ritual has to be done again or repeated every year on a certain day at a certain time of day. And so the druidic order sends a druid every year to repeat the ritual. So the adventure is set in a place called the Goat Horn, which is a modest inn that's on a road that travels through this forest. And the forest is unnamed. At least I don't remember a name of the forest. So you can pretty much place it anywhere. And the forest itself is unimportant. The Goat Horn is kind of in the middle of nowhere, so it's an inn that is like in between locations. So it assumes that your player characters are one of several NPCs that have been traveling this road and have stopped at this inn for the night. Just to rest before they continue on their trek to wherever their ultimate location is, or is supposed to be in your campaign. The Goat Horn is owned by two dwarven ex-adventurers, Gelda and Ananda. And then there are also some other NPCs that are mentioned in the adventure that you can use as you desire. But one particular adventurer or NPC, I should say, that you interact with almost immediately is Horvath. He is the priest of the Old Faith that is supposed to be doing the renewal of the ritual at the Old Knock. So he checks in before the player characters check in, and he is preparing to do the ritual when he suffers some kind of life-ending attack. So it's either a heart attack or a stroke, but he dies of natural means. At least that's what it says in the adventure. You can, if you'd like, change that up so that he dies of unnatural means, because the Old Knock woke up early, or maybe Old Knock has some others that have been lured in by its presence and are working on its behalf. You can change it up a little bit if you'd like, but basically the point here is that Horvath dies before he can complete the ritual, or before he can even start the ritual. He has all the necessary things to do the ritual in his room, but he doesn't get out to actually do it. So the player characters come in and they are just coming off the road, and it's early evening. They sit down for a meal, perhaps, and maybe a drink before they actually get a room and retire. When things start going bad. So that there's some prep here. You can set up as much in advance as you want with interacting with the people on the inn, getting to know the NPCs. Probably the more you do of that, the more they're going to be invested in trying to save some of these people when the attack comes. So I would say invest a little bit of time doing some role playing and getting your player characters to interact with these NPCs. But at some point, you're going to want to start the adventure by getting the attack underway. So the attack basically starts with the PCs realizing that something is wrong inside the inn first. So this is the discovery of Horvath's corpse, either by an NPC, a waitress, one of the owners of the inn, or one of the PCs themselves. So one of the PCs may actually be connected to Horvath. Maybe he was meeting Horvath here as an apprentice to take over the chore of doing the ritual. That could be an adventure hook for having your players come here in the first place, or it could simply be that somebody asked them to go rouse up old Horvath because it's dinner time. Then when they rap on the door, they realize that there's no answer. They walk in, and that's when they find Horvath's corpse there. Initially, the corpse is inert, but then he starts to rouse him. He starts to become aroused. Not that type of aroused. Come on, pull your head out of the gutter. His body starts to move, and he utters two words: "I ... hunger," and then he tries to eat their brains. So that is when they realize that something is going down. So Horvath's corpse becomes a zombie. He actually says some more. He says, "I smell your blood, taste your flesh. Death comes for you, carried by my children that I have sent to end you. They come for you, come to end your miserable mortal lives." So you can make that as creepy as you want. Obviously, the old knock is speaking through Horvath. So that's why I think it may be good to have Horvath die as a result of Old Knock's intervention. So he's a zombie. So the first attack is them dealing with the corpse of Horvath, and then that's when they realize that there is something. Maybe some NPCs leave the inn, and you hear some screaming outside. And when you look out the door or the window, you see that they've been attacked, and that there's all of these undead coming basically from every direction out of the woods towards the inn. So that's when we actually go into the siege activity. Now, the siege is what this section of the adventure is called, and it talks about the siege activities. Now, what this section is designed to do is to go through the siege in phases, so that it gives them an opportunity to look for things to fortify the inn, because there are way too many undead coming out of the woods for them to go out and fight. That would be suicide. I mean, they can try it, but you should punish them by killing them all to a man very quickly, or to a person very quickly. And then when you run the adventure again with another group of player characters a year later, you can repeat the scenario, and they have learned their lesson. Or you can have them take the place of some NPCs that are already in the inn that watch their player characters die a horrible death. But at any rate, however you want to choose to handle that scenario is up to you. But the siege is broken into three phases, which is the siege activity phase, the unexpected events phase, and the encounter resolution phase. So the siege activity phase allows them to do one of several activities. The first one is to bolster defenses. This is where they are boarding up windows, hammering nails or spikes into the doors, and trying to keep the undead out. They can also try to improvise the ritual. So they find the ritual stuff in Horvath's chamber, and they can make an attempt to try to actually do the ritual themselves. They can rest. This is actually something they would probably do on a subsequent siege round. So the siege is broken into rounds, which is broken into is subdivided into phases. So each siege round has 3 phases. So I should have started off with that. The siege is broken down into 5 2-hour blocks. So each round is 2 hours. Okay. In those 2 hours, they can do one of these 3 things, or a couple of these 3 things, or however many you deem they can get done in 2 hours. So again, bolster defenses, improvise the ritual. They can rest. They can recover, which means they're actually healing. They can do a supply run, which means that they try to actually leave the inn to go to a storage building out back to get some supplies that will help them get them through the night. And then there are there's this table here that says unexpected events phase. So after the siege activities, you roll a d20 and find the result on the following table. Alternatively, you can choose a result from this table that fits with what happened during that previous phase. So you can roll randomly to determine what happens during an events phase. And this complicates matters because you have things like the Demon Lord laughs, rolling this table twice and use both results. You have banging on the walls at the end of the zombie horde makes it impossible for anyone to rest. You have that looked like it was secure. Increase the threat rating during the next encounter resolution phase by 1, and we'll get to that in a second. Then I said, and then there's this one that harkens back again to the Army of the Dead or Army of Darkness movie. I said the damn words. The next time a character attempts to improvise a ritual activity, the character makes rolls with 3 banes. So these are fun things that can be used to complicate the events phases. So the encounter resolution phase is the final phase of the siege round, which reveals what happens to get through their defenses, and then the characters have to actually deal with that physically through combat. So it could be that nothing gets through and they don't have to fight anything. Could be 1d3 animated corpses break through. Could be a d6 animated corpses plus a zombie. Could be d6 plus 3 animated corpses and 1d3 zombies, or it can be an animated corpse or a d6 animated corpses d6 zombies and a corpse flower, and a corpse flower is listed up here. So you've got 2 hours, and at dawn, or you got 2-hour siege rounds, and at dawn the attack ends. So this says that the attack starts at 8 o'clock. So if it starts at 8 o'clock, then you have 8 to 10 as the first round, 10 to 12 as the second round, 12 to 2 as the third round, 2 to 4 as the fourth round, and 4 to 6 as the fifth round. So I would say let's do 5 rounds of the siege to get the players from the start to the end. And so that is 5 2-hour rounds where all of this stuff happens. You can do less if you'd like. If you don't have as much time in your session, you could cut it down to however many rounds you want. But I say 5 is a good number to use in this adventure. So then, just depending on how things go throughout the night, they can survive or they can be slaughtered to a person. this is just a really super fun adventure. It is very innovative in how it's designed. And so I really love this as a starting adventure for probably more seasoned players. So maybe not your first Shadow the Demon Lord campaign, but if you do a follow up or another Shadow the Demon Lord campaign, they already know, your players already know the rules, then I'm going to I'm going to rescind what I said earlier as far as starting them off at level 1. And I would say this is a fun way to start. If you're going to start at a session 0, this is a great fun adventure to do that. Okay, so let's move on to the next adventure. And this is an adventure that I have not run, but I have played in. And it is called Dark Deeds and Last Hope. Now, this adventure is probably more fleshed out than any of the other adventures because I believe it was designed to help your player characters and your GM not only start off your characters, but also to build their starting settlement. So Dark Deeds and Last Hope being the settlement, is kind of a blank template that you fill in as you play through the system. Now, the one shot that I played in, we didn't do that. It was just an adventure that we went through. So we didn't actually build up Last Hope, but this adventure is designed to do that. Now, I'm not going to go through that whole process because it'll take too long. And, again, I didn't go through the process myself, so I really am not comfortable talking about it, but you can read through the adventure yourself and follow the advice that it gives on how to build through or how to build up the town and how to build up the NPCs. It even gives you a map here that's blank where you can draw in the various buildings that you want to include in the adventure. So it's a really neat, innovative way to start an adventure and to build a settlement. But again, I'm not going to go into that aspect of it. What I really like to do is just talk about the adventure itself, which is pretty straightforward. The adventure itself assumes that the player characters, once again, are passing through. They may be actually citizens of Last Hope, but it really depends on which way you want to go on that. I was when I played through it, I was a player character that was passing through, and something happens where an event happens where someone runs out of the Temple of the Holy Finger, which is the town's church, and screaming that they've been attacked, or that there's been an attack, or something along those lines. And when the player characters are witness to this event, and so that is supposed to be the hook that gets them into the adventure to go. Basically to get them involved in what is occurring. So what's really occurring is that there are two NPCs, two opponents or two adversaries that are kicking off the events of this adventure. There is a relic that is in the Temple of the Holy Finger that these two need in order to do a necromantic ritual. So one of the adversaries is a person that is trying to become a necromancer. And so he's got some rudimentary skills, but he hasn't become a necromancer yet. So he needs this relic from the Temple of the Holy Finger in order to help, kind of push him over the edge, to help him raise his first undead creature. Now, this NPC happens to be related to the mayor of the town, but that really didn't play into the adventure that I was in, so you can kind of ignore that aspect of the adventure if you want. But the impetus for getting the players into the adventure is this event, where they find out that the priest of the Temple of the Holy Finger has been murdered. So when they go to investigate, they find that the priest is dead and that there's some bloody tracks leading out of the church and into the woods. So when they go into the woods to pursue the tracks, they run across a naked fellow who is an NPC, and when through interaction with this naked fellow, well, actually, I forgot something, so let me back up a little bit. As they are tracking the trail through the woods, they come across this naked body of an NPC, and so they find this body, and then they continue with the pursuing the tracks, and then they run across this dude that looks just like the dead guy that they ran across. So obviously something is up there. They can either attack him or they can interact with him. They find out that is a changeling, and then that changeling is wounded and is trying to make her way back to the camp where her companion, the necromancer dude, is trying to raise a corpse. And so she talks the PCs into helping her, and they follow her back to the camp, but they find their camp has been attacked, and the necromancer is gone. But they do have an animated corpse there. So the animated corpse attacks them. Apparently, he was successful in getting the animated corpse animated, and so the corpse attacks him. They then have to hunt down this necromancer. He's been captured by some beastmen, and so the beastmen camp is located, and they fight the beastmen. Now that's a very simplified version of the adventure. There are other ways that you can go about this adventure by interacting with the NPCs in town. There is a kid that actually found the dead priest that can be somebody that they interact with that gets them into the adventure more. There's a mayor who can hire them. There's a town constable that can become either an ally or a trouble causer for the PCs. There are different ways to go about the adventure, but ultimately the adventure will end up with you hunting down or finding the beastman camp, and killing the beastman and finding the necromancer either dead or cowering, tied up, or whatever, and then they can do with him whatever they want. So the adventure itself is very straightforward. It's very simple, so simple that you can approach it any way that you want. So as far as adventures go, if you need a simple adventure, this is about as simple as they get. And if you want to build up a town in the process, then this is a good adventure to start your campaign with and to have a starting location. So for me, I thought it was okay. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was all right. I was just happy that I got a chance to play it because I'm usually GMing or DMing, and I don't get to play very often. So I was just happy to play. I had fun, and the guy that ran it for us did a good job. So Dark Deeds and Last Hope, definitely a decent adventure to start your campaign off in. All right, so that is the one that I have not run, but I have gone through. Now, the one that I have prepped to run, but have not actually run it, is this one, which is A Year Without Rain. Now, this one was written and designed by a veteran game designer from Wizards of the Coast. He's a Wizards of the Coast alumni who moved on to work for Monty Cook Games on the Numenera and the Strange and the Cypher system. Bruce Cordell. So he's a really good designer. I like a lot of his stuff. He's really designed some good stuff. But this game isn't one of them. Or this adventure isn't one of them. And I say that because it was. Can I talk? It's set up as a starting adventure. This is by no means a starting adventure. No way. This will slaughter any starting party that you run through this adventure. So I don't think Bruce had a good grip on Shadow the Demon Lord when he wrote this adventure, because it will murderize your characters. Now, if that's your goal, then yeah, this is a great starting adventure. If you want to murderize them all just to prove how deadly the game is, then this is a great way to start it off, but I wouldn't recommend it, at least not for a starting adventure. Now, for a novice adventure, I would say this is not a bad adventure because it is really your first dungeon crawl. And so the adventure starts off with the player characters in the town of Asylum. They can be, visiting once again, or they can be people in Asylum. But there are murders that seem to be happening while the player characters are in town. So during the course of their stint in town, these murders come up, and there are NPCs they interact with to help try to solve the mystery. But ultimately, they would interact with a character named Mallory, and through interacting with Mallory, they ultimately determine that they have to find the source of the murderers, which is coming from the town's well. So the town's well is dry because there's been a drought for a long time in this town. And so there hasn't been any water in this well for a long, long time, which is probably what kicked off the things happening to begin with. But at any rate, the player characters have to go into the well, and that's when they do start the dungeon crawl. And as you can see, it's a pretty extensive dungeon. There's actually, the entry room, a hallway. There is side chamber over here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 chambers down here, and another couple chambers over here. And each one of these chambers has something going on, either an encounter or a trap of some sort. And so that's why I say this is a very deadly adventure if you are using starting characters. Now, I would run this more as a novice tier adventure because they will probably survive at novice tier, and they will actually benefit as well because there's some decent loot down here. But do not start them as starting characters in this adventure. They will die horribly. Okay, so that is A Year Without Rain. Let's go ahead and move on. So I've covered 4 adventures so far that I've had some experience with, either in running, playing through, or prepping to run. Now, the last 2 adventures I have not run or played in or prepped. So I have read them, but reading an adventure doesn't really give you a great feel for how the adventure is going to run. So take my next couple of discussions for these 2 adventures, with a grain of salt. I would recommend running them. If they read well to you, run them and see how it goes. But here are my thoughts after reading them. Slaver's Lash is one of the typical RPG tropes where you start the adventure as either slaves or having been captured to be sold as slaves. And I have run that trope. That's why it's a trope. Because it's a common way to start a campaign. But here's what I learned from when I ran this type of adventure in the past. Not this adventure in particular, but that scenario where they're starting off as prisoners or as slaves or otherwise, captured and helpless. The players hate it, or at least my players hated it. Because they were captured and helpless. They had no equipment. They were chained up, and there were lots of dangerous people around. So even if they tried to escape, they would have to fight somehow, unarmed, or use makeshift weapons. And it wasn't going to end well for them doing it that way. So they would have to find a way to escape. And ultimately, what I would have to do is provide them a way to escape, which, if it's done well, it can work okay. But, and this adventure does provide ways for them to escape that is done well, in my opinion. If you don't do it well, you're basically just feeding them a way to escape, which kind of feels like you're cheating. And that's kind of what I did when I did my version way back when. And it just didn't go over well. So I would say if you're starting GM, don't run this adventure, because I think in order to do it well, you really have to know what you're doing. You really have to know what mindset your players are going to be in as prisoners, as being helpless, and you don't want to cheapen that. You don't want to cheapen that experience by just handing them an easy way to escape. You want them to earn it. And this adventure does provide ways for them to earn it. It doesn't come easy, because there are lots of orcs surrounding this caravan that they're trapped in. And there's also a mole that is posing as a prisoner, but is actually working with the orcs. So it makes it more difficult for them to escape, but there are ways for them to escape, or to try to escape, um, and and to earn it, rather than you as a GM handing them an easy way to escape through convenience, or through impossible coincidence. So I would say this is probably not the best adventure to introduce somebody to Shadow the Demon Lord. In fact, I read um, a post by somebody that was introduced to Shadow the Demon Lord through this adventure, and it really turned them off the game, because of the fact that they were started off as a prisoner. They couldn't do anything. They felt like they were helpless for most of the adventure. When they finally were able to do something, they didn't have any proper weapons, so they really couldn't do much. And they ended up dying. And it was just a really negative experience for them. So I would shy away from using the Slaver's Lash with people that you're trying to get into Shadow the Demon Lord. I would point you to any of the adventures that I've already covered up to this point, except for the year of the last one I just reviewed, the Year Without Rain. I would run one of the first three before running this one. So I'm definitely not going to recommend Slaver's Lash. The last adventure is The Witching Wood. And this is the one I know least about, but essentially, from the gist of what I read, you have player characters in a town that is cursed. And the town was actually a thriving town. It had abundant crops, people that were thriving, but then something happened and everything started going to hell. And the people link that with a witch that has moved into the vicinity, and her coven, and they believe that she is the cause of their problems, and they are right. She is causing problems for them. So basically, the adventure is the witch causing problems, and the player characters building up to the need to actually go out into the woods and find her and do something about it. So that's pretty much the adventure. A number of things happen. These things are designed to convince the adventurers to do something about it, and so they have to go into the woods to look for the witch or her coven, or both. They spend some time searching the woods. Things happen. There are encounters in the woods. Eventually, they find the witch's lair, and they either find the witch or they drive her off. So that's pretty much the adventure. It seems okay. I would probably run this as a one-shot. Seems like a fairly straightforward adventure. I may kind of fast forward through some of the hooks to get them into the adventure, and maybe try to pull them in more directly, because this can be a time suck if you're going through each one of these scenarios. But I may just pick one that sounds the most interesting, and then use that to lure them into the adventure, and really get it so that the players want to hunt down this witch. Have the witch do something to one of them, either steal a possession, or kill somebody, an NPC that they like, or something along those lines, and get them to really want to hunt her down. So again, pretty straightforward adventure. It's I think survivable. So I think this is a decent adventure to start off with. Again, I haven't run it or played through it, so I don't know if there's any hidden catches that could make the game deadlier. or change the experience from what I've read, but it reads well, so I think it would be a decent starting adventure. So to summarize, out of all of the adventures that I ran, I would recommend the first three that I had just discussed, starting with Survival of the Fittest, then moving to Dead by Dawn, and then finally Dark Deeds and Last Hope. Those are the top three. And then I would go to the Witching Wood, and then I would not use a Slaver's Lash unless you have a group that really likes to be challenged in a way where they are starting completely helpless and they have to work their way out of a helpless situation to become, or to survive the story. So that is what you get out of the Slaver's Lash. And again, I don't recommend that if you're trying to bring people into the Shadow of the Demon Lord, because it is not a fun experience for people just trying to learn the game. All right, so that is pretty much it. Once again, I want to thank you for watching my videos. I do this so that people that are looking for information on Shadow of the Demon Lord has somebody that's actually talking about the game. You don't find that a lot out there in internet land, and there are interviews and there are live plays of the game, but just discussing the game, discussing how it works, and talking about different aspects of the game. You're not finding a whole lot out there, at least I'm not. So I hope to make these videos a resource where people who are wanting to know more about Shadow of the Demon Lord and have an interest in getting into the game have a resource to go to learn more about it. So that's my intent here, but in order for that to be successful, my videos need to be found. In order to find them amongst the sea of interviews with Rob Schwab and live action play, I need to have people like my videos, and I need to have some interaction in the comments of my videos in YouTube. So if you like the content, if you like my video, this one or other videos, please give me a like and also leave a comment, ask questions, add your own feedback to any of the adventures that I just covered, your own experience. If you went through any of these adventures or if you ran them, what was your experience? Did you enjoy it? Was it tough? Was it a piece of cake? Am I being too hard on Slaver's Lash? Am I being too positive on the first three that I reviewed? Am I off base as far as the Year Without Rain? Give me some feedback and, give me some interaction so that the folks out there in the world that are trying to figure out this game have something that they can watch and learn from. So once again, thanks again for watching my videos, and I will see you next time with another topic. So hail to the Demon Lord, and catch you next time.